without further ado, I'm gonna call on the panelists to introduce themselves, and we will start with Emily because you're on my right.
Woo! Hey, I know almost every one of you guys, but it's so good to see all your faces without mask. So my name is Emily. I and my friend Bonnie have the Plant Connector, which is a small plant and curiosity shop that features a lot of local makers and small makers. And then we have a sort of a gallery side that really is kind of focuses on north northern Berkshire makers and artists. And so we're trying to bridge both like plant love and art into one little space. So we opened in September. We're very new, so we've been kind of navigating our whole business through COVID, and so that's kind of our gist right now.
Thank you, Emily. Jess, you can go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jess Sweeney. I am a member of Common Folk Artists Collective, which is on Holden Street, was formerly before COVID on Main Street, and we opened at the very end of 2018. I also recently started a consignment clothing and eco-friendly lifestyle pop-up shop on, technically it's 5 Holden Street, but I'm a vendor of the Berkshire Emporium. And yeah, that's who I am. I wear many other hats in North Adams, but those are the two that apply to this conversation.
Thank you, Jess. Anna?
I am Anna Farrington, and like Jess, I wear a number of different hats here in North Adams, but for this conversation, I'll be wearing my Installation Space hat. I founded the Installation Space Gallery in North Adams in 2018. It's a gallery that features immersive, experiential, and interpretive art installations. And I do try to feature a regional primarily Massachusetts-based artists. Yeah, so I'm here on historic Eagle Street, right across from the Plant Connector.
Thank you, Anna. And Felicity?
I'm Felicity Jones. I'm up in Troy, New York, and I co-own and run Superior Merchandise Company, which is a specialty coffee shop and like curated retail shop combo space. So we're a full cafe, and then also have in the front of the shop some curated home goods and stationery, apothecary, kind of just conglomerate of retail items that I pick out from small businesses all over the country, some local, some from other parts of the country, and some from other parts of the world, but all like really small single artists or small businesses. And then we do have a small fresh food menu where we try to use as much local ingredients as possible. And then we do serve beer and wine as well. And we've been open since September 2015, so it'll be 6 years in September.
Nice.
Awesome, thanks. So you all have similar things in common, are local folks that you showcase. You're all pretty much small businesses, which is kind of why I hand selected all of you with some inspiration too. But I want to talk about the obvious first and get it out of the way. Since we're sort of coming out of the pandemic, I want to know how you all dealt with that. I know Common Folk moved during it. Some places shut down. A lot of things went online. Emily opened before or after or during?
September, mid.
Yeah. So I'm curious just all of your experiences with the pandemic and how you adjusted, shifted, even dealing with like, the governor's restrictions, everything like that. What were some of your experiences just coming off the top of your head? We can start with Jess.
So yes, Common Folk ended up having to move. So sort of in the very early stages in February, I started to notice that our revenue is just really not as predictable, and I found that to be really weird. And ironically, had a mentor meeting with Diane Scott, who is a MCLA professor and has been mentoring Common Folks development since our founding moments, which was earlier than starting the store. And she was like, "So what are you going to do about this pandemic?" And we were like, "What? What pandemic?" And she was like, "Yeah, colleges are like canceling all of their international trips. That like there's sort of this like school this conversation in the school university systems of this being a big problem globally." And so myself and Becky Waterhouse, who's my like partner in crime with Common Folk, had a quick little breakdown emotionally, and we're like, "Oh no, what are we gonna do?" And then we very quickly supported each other in just assessing the big picture of the business and what we knew we could do, what we didn't know, what we were unsure of. And it became very clear that quickly, if the trend continued in the way that it did, that we wouldn't be able to afford our rent. So we reached out to our landlord and we said, "We need to move, and or you need to like we had an agreement because he was giving us a more affordable rate than the value or than the market value of the space. And so we had this agreement in our initial lease to rise $200 every 6 months. So we said we either need to freeze that or like we need another situation. And he asked us if we would be willing to move to Holden Street. We thought about that really hard as we've moved a lot in North Adams for various different reasons. And then when we did the math, we realized we'd be saving ourselves upwards of 10 grand. So it just seemed like the right decision. And I think it was the best decision we've made because we've really found this to be our home. We're like pretty sure that this is the best space and the space that makes most sense for the collective that we've ever been in North Adams. And we found ourselves coming out of COVID in a very financially stable place, which is relieving to say the least. So lots of hard decisions, and moving in the middle of a pandemic when you can't be in the same room as other people was not fun. Thank you, Michaela, who helped out a lot through that process. But yeah, we just made a lot of hard decisions and kept going and stayed as positive as we could.
Yeah, staying positive definitely had to happen because everything else was falling apart. Emily, did you have any similar experiences?
I think for me, because really how the Plant Connector even started was because of Anna, so my lovely neighbor. And she had this artist who was one of your first artists during the whole pandemic, and he did this beautiful art project, which was his love letter to New York City or to Brooklyn, right, or New York. And so I was like, I had lost my job in the pandemic. I was laid off like the first week. I was like, and I was very happy about it. And I was like, what's my love letter to North Adams? So just so happened Eagle Street space was open and available, and I was like, well, I'm going to put a lot of green stuff in the middle of a window and do a fake storefront, because we need more storefronts in North Adams. And I didn't expect it to actually be a business. So the pandemic that was really hard was navigating City Hall when it's closed. So I had a lot of I was meeting like city officials behind dumpsters because like to hand off deeds, and like trying really hard to like get a business name that I like threw in the day that I had to get the permit. It was just like all these like back end things happening. And so for me, the biggest part about the pandemic was like actually starting a business during a business that I wasn't even sure that was going to be a business. I really thought it was going to be this fake storefront in an art studio that I was going to sit in and sell on eBay. Like that's kind of how it seemed to be. And so I learned really quickly that this community is like such a rock star community and support. And it really turned into a business really quickly. So that was kind of exciting. So And for the pandemic, I think now I'm like, what does the business look like outside of the pandemic? So I'm learning a very different, I'm having to be flexible now and learning something different as we really want to start thinking about programming and like how people can experience the store with full capacity, which is 3 people. So, I don't know.
No, that's great. It's good for people to know that like not only is it hard to open a business in general, but like navigating it when, things are closed. I've also been to that same dumpster for permits. Um, Anna, were you open during the pandemic? Did you have shows? Did you go online? I know a lot of the museums around here did go virtual.
So when the pandemic started was in March, and the gallery was already closed for the winter break, but I had lined up a full season of shows. And so I ended up reaching out independently to each of the artists and just working with them to see what their comfort level was with putting a show on. And so the first 2 shows of the season, the artists came in. I socially distanced with them and gave them keys to the space, and they basically had run of the space. But we did only virtual content. We did, virtual opening and interviews with the artists. And I offered private viewings of the shows where I would coordinate with people who wanted to see the show and have the gallery open so that they could just come in on their own and check out the art. And then when they left, they would text me and I would go down and lock the gallery up again. But as soon as the restrictions allowed museums to open with, occupancy limits and masking and social distancing and all of that stuff, I went ahead and I opened the gallery in adherence with the Massachusetts state guidelines for museums opening. So really the biggest impact with the pandemic for me was having a lot of virtual content to put up to keep people engaged in the gallery and what was happening at the gallery. And I don't know how successful it was, but I felt like it's what I could do to keep going. And the artists seemed to appreciate it. And the artists still got to have their show. They still got photography of their show. They still, have the benefits of being able to, list the gallery as somewhere they've shown their work. So I think it was successful. And then as, just paying attention to what the state guidelines are for opening and making sure that we're maintaining safety first and making sure that my staff people know what the state guidelines are and how many people should be in the gallery at a time. I think, just trying to keep it safe.
Right.
Priority.
Thank God for the internet, man. This year we needed it. Or maybe we didn't. I don't know. It was both bad and good. Awesome. Felicity, I'm curious about your situation because you have this hybrid, cafe, retail. Did you guys do curbside? Did you already have e-commerce? I noticed you have some products online.
Yeah, so pre-COVID, we did have a lot of our retail listed online for sale, but we didn't have like an online ordering system for the cafe aspect of the business. So that was one of the first things we did when we had to, not have anyone inside anymore. Well, so we actually didn't ever close because we had grocery. We were considered an essential business. And so we kind of played that up. Whereas like prior to COVID, a lot of our retail goods were kind of like luxury, non-essential stuff. We actually narrowed that amount of things and expanded our kind of more essential items and opened a little grocery and pantry section just kind of to benefit our neighborhood and community, so they didn't have to like go into Walmart or Price Chopper where there's like a lot more people. We had a really low number of people allowed inside at a time. And then we did also expand our online offerings to all the cafe goods, including the grocery and pantry items. So people could just pre-order online and come in and pick up, or we would bring them out to them. So yeah, we did expand the online, which was a lot of work, but ended up being really beneficial. And we've actually kept that now, even though we're reopened. And it's really nice. So yeah, I would say our biggest changes were the adding the ordering system online for food, and then food and drink, and then also like expanding the grocery and pantry section, which we've also kept. And then basically everything in this grocery and pantry section is from local farms, like other local small businesses. So it's like also benefiting our community in that way. Eggs, bread, pasta, sauce, local meats, local cheeses, that kind of stuff. And for a while, I just thought I could not wrap my head around us selling bacon, because like for our whole existence, we've just been, selling candles and like pretty things. And now we're selling meat, but like it really worked and it caught on and it still sells really well. And I think our little neighborhood, there's a lot of apartments around us. So I think a lot of people around us are there's also, to note, if you guys don't know anything about Troy, there's no grocery store in downtown at all. There's nothing walkable if you live in downtown to buy groceries at, other than like a Stewart's. So that kind of was one of the big reasons why we wanted to make this expansion, just kind of like for the sake of our neighborhood and everybody that lived around us. So we only closed one day during COVID, and we stayed open 7 days a week. We just shortened our hours a little bit to kind of cut back on, we were slower, and keeping up with payroll was difficult with less revenue coming in. So we did shorten our hours a bit. We were open till 8 p.m. and we cut it back to 5 p.m. every day. And that kind of helped balance, the less sales coming in with like still being able to meet payroll and keep all of our staff on. And one thing that actually really benefited us during COVID was the SLA changed the liquor license laws. Whereas before with our tavern license, we weren't able to sell wine to go. But then when they swapped that, saying you can sell alcohol to go now, we could start selling wine to go, which was incredible, and actually has become like a really big point of revenue for us. And luckily he just extended that again to June, throughout June. So we'll see how long it actually stays relevant. I'm hoping forever, but yeah, those are kind of the biggest pivots that we experienced here.
I like that you sort of embrace the grocery part of things. Like, okay, yeah, bacon is essential to our neighbors.
Yeah, and it's from the farm that's like 15 minutes from our building too. So it's like, helping that family out as well, which I thought was really cool and important.
Yeah, something that's happened in North Adams recently, which I'm gonna sort of transition into Anna a little bit, is First Fridays. And I know previously we used to have Down Street Art, which was like a last Thursday of the month sort of celebration downtown. But since everything happened, schools changing positions, whatever, it hasn't happened. So Anna introduced First Fridays last month. And do you want to talk a little bit about the creation of this fantastic endeavor?
Well, it's not really, I'm not inventing anything. People do First Fridays all over the country. But I had helped with, so Down Street Art was the last Thursday of the month. And it was an initiative that was put in place by MCLA, the local college. And I had helped them out in 2019, and I ran Down Street Art sort of as a stopgap measure to keep it going while they were looking for staffing. And then the pandemic hit, so there was obviously nothing in 2020. And so over the course of this past winter, as Emily was doing a gangbuster business across the street, we were starting to think about ways that we could enliven the downtown. And I had heard from MCLA that they weren't sure what they were going to do about Down Street Art this year. So I decided that it might make sense to have something that was similar, but that would really engage all the businesses downtown, not just the arts centric businesses. And one of the things that I find frustrating in North Adams is that first of all, there's just not that many businesses, but also that everything closes so early. Shops close at 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, and there's nothing to do downtown at night unless you're going to a bar or restaurant now. So I started asking the businesses downtown, would you be interested in this? You know, how would you feel about it? And everybody was very positive about it. Yes, I've seen that in other places. You know, it's nothing revolutionary. So one random Thursday in April, I posted on Facebook that North Adams was doing First Fridays, and it just magically happened. People participated in whatever way they could, and people came out, and there was lots of happy faces, and people with shopping bags, and I thought it was great. And we just had First Friday on this past Friday. There was a pickup band in the park that played until 9. That was dynamite, and there were a lot of people out. I think, Jess, you said that you guys had a good turnout on Holden Street. So I just think it's been wonderful, and something that the city was ready to do. They just needed just a little tiny push, and it's just happening, which is perfect.
That's awesome. Yeah, we do Troy Night Out in Troy, which is the last Friday of every month, and it's seriously like the biggest day/night of the month for like every small business in Troy.
Totally, I could totally see that, and I think that I'm hoping that here in North Adams, people really start to get into it. I love that Eagle Street Music had this pickup band in the park, and you know, there's pop-up shops happening on street corners or whatever. I'd love to see more of that. Yeah.
How important do you guys think these sort of initiatives are, whether it's, you know, big or small, or just getting people involved to business owner networking? You know, I feel like some mom and pop businesses have been around forever, 30, 40 years, and they don't even know their neighbor type of thing. So as a small business owner, especially in downtown areas, how important is that to engage with your neighbors? Jess, you can go.
I mean, I think it's really important. I think I think any human being wants to feel like they belong to something. And these kinds of nights bring the community together into one place and like allow us opportunities to connect with each other. And especially in a post-pandemic world where we haven't had that ability to connect in the ways that North Adams really thrives on a lot of the time. Like we love when anyone is doing an event. I mean, downtown celebration, all the things that the Office of Tourism does are always like very successful events. And so I think anytime these activities are happening are good for everybody, whether it's good for our revenue or whether it's good for our souls, like all around really, really good. And I think what it is especially helpful for is like this collective marketing. I think, you know, if just one entity was responsible for like being like, this thing is happening, I mean, it would probably be just as successful, but it helps that like everyone is just taking it on and being like, I'm doing this on First Fridays, come down, you know.
It really was that grassroots sort of aspect of it that I wanted people to sort of see and grasp onto and say, oh yeah, grassroots, I can do anything, or you know, as little or as much as I want. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Right. There's no guidelines to it.
On the last First Friday, so a big part of the Plant Connector is to do like a plant and art sort of collaboration. And so we do like the first one we did like free little terrarium making, and we made 87 terrariums for the community. And to me, this is the reason why I'm in business, is to see like the joy of people when they make things. And so it's like these First Fridays are a reminder of like why I'm doing this, and like the community that we live in is so cool and so diverse too. There's so many different types of people, even though it's only like 13,000 people. And then the last First Friday, we did like an air plant, like people were making wreaths and stuff. And I was so in it because I was by myself running this like very hot space. And then I walk outside and there's this blaring band and the sky is so dark and Anna's got this line of people outside and I'm like, oh, this North Adams, you know, it's so beautiful here. You know, it's like, to me, those kind of events, it's like so nice to see my neighbors thriving and seeing them have knowing something's happening, even though I can't always participate in their business as much as I'd love to, but it's like, oh, we're all a part of a unit here, you know, and it's so cool to watch people be happy, you know. So it's a real it's kind of like Felicity, what you were saying about you made something for your community, you had a need for the grocery and everything. And I feel like First Fridays was a need to like get our community together. And I feel like that's kind of what I believe all of the creative small businesses really kind of why the flexibility is what makes us kind of like a real part of our community, I guess, in a way. So.
Definitely. And speaking of flexibility, you all have very unique spaces physically. And I admire how all of them are presented. I like to think of feeling very welcome in your spaces and curious by what's around and how things are displayed. So, you know, whether it's just art or just bacon or a candle or a handmade t-shirt or a plant, how do you guys think about your space and what the customer will feel when they walk into it? Anyone can start because you all have sort of different ways of doing this.
I'll speak first. I am an installation gallery, so really in my mind the gallery is a white box that it becomes whatever the artist's vision wants it to be. But I do try and encourage every artist to make sure that there's something in the window out facing the street that's going to be engaging or eye-catching, even if it's just the image on the paper sign or whatever they end up putting in the window. So I think I'm the least qualified to respond to that question, which is why I went first, because it's really all about what the artist wants to present, and really just encouraging them to have something that's facing the public way.
I totally stole that idea though. And I was like, I'm going to have like half a gallery so that it's constantly always changing and exciting and engaging. And so I kind of really admired Anna's approach to the way she allows the artist to kind of take over the space. So half of the space is definitely, I try really hard not to encroach on it, but I really do all the time because I got too much going on with soils and stuff. But for the most part, I really believe that artists like owning a space really adds to the constant changing of the plant connector. As the design aspect of it though, for the little shop area and display, there's I'm from the Bay Area, and so there's Sweeney's on Valencia Street. I don't know, Nico, you probably know what I'm talking about, but the Pirate Store to me is the coolest place on the face of this earth. It's like this little place where it really started off to be like a place for kids to go and learn about writing and stuff. And then, because it was on Valencia Street, it needed to have a storefront. And so the way they had to do it was by turning it into like the biggest shop they could think of. And that was a pirate store. And in that pirate store, there's like all these cabinets of curiosities. And so I really wanted the plant connector to feel like an exploration. So I want you to go through all the drawers and I want you to look all, like there's little plastic cows hidden places, and there's always these moments of like these things that you can kind of sense that are like not, that are very much very much intentional, but meant to be like, oh my gosh, I just saw something, like some little human is waving at me in this corner, you know. And I kind of wanted it to be such this joy and this way of exploring this very small space. And that's kind of how I look at the design aspect of the plant connector.
I always go through the drawers and I find a pair of butt earrings, and I love that. Felicity, I feel like when I walk into Superior Merch, it's very clean, but also like specifically, I don't know, things are like placed specifically, but also has that curiosity feeling. Are you in charge of that? Do you guys talk about how the layout is?
Yeah, so I'm basically in charge of the retail section. My partner Mike does more of like the interior design aspect of it, but we totally work hand in hand. And yeah, we definitely wanted like a bright and clean and energizing space, because a lot of the cafes in Troy are kind of like dark, not a lot of natural light, kind of have like oversized, really worn in couches and aren't necessarily like a space that you're going to walk into and feel like energized or inspired or those kinds of things. So we really wanted to create a space that would make someone like feel inspired when they walk in, but whether it's, you know, by like the beautiful like dappled light coming through the window with the plant shadows, or the way you know, the retail is kind of displayed with different like color palettes and stuff in mind, or I don't know, I just feel like everything we do is pretty thought out, and we do try to freshen up the space with different retail displays. Like every month or so we get new product in a lot, and kind of rearrange based on the new stuff we get in. Yeah, when we just actually reintroduced indoor seating too, so that's kind of like reconfigured the space a bit now that this is the first time we've had indoor seating in over a year. So yeah, that kind of changed the space up a bit again, but I feel like the more you can kind of change up your space and get people interested in like kind of, I don't know, what's happening, what's the newest thing, what's going to catch their eye when they walk in, the better off you are.
Do you kind of put yourself in the customer's shoes sometimes to figure out what that experience will feel like upon walking in?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I feel like because I don't work on the floor as much as I used to. When we first opened, I worked in the store every day, and now I really only work the weekends. But I definitely still like do like walkthroughs around the store and just like, you know, try to get a feeling of like what the customer is experiencing.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that space so much. I agree with you. I think Nico and I went to a wine bar there one night after a flight back from California, and it was like dark. I mean, the wine bar was so cool, but I remember it being like very dark and quiet and like, I don't know. So I totally get that vibe. Jess, I know you've done a lot of this at Common Folk, but I want to hear how you've explored the new space at Savvy Hive, and like working with like sometimes having a door open and sometimes not, and like using what was there to present your items.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting making a shift from a collectively managed space to like a space that is me, and that I have all of the choice in designing. Because at Common Folk, you know, there's 40 members. I really try as hard as I can not to just dictate how things are displayed, how people's art is presented in the space. I really try to do that with each of the artists. And being that we share our space with our studio, things just sort of unfold a little bit differently there. But when I went to like start to set up Savvy Hive, I really found this opportunity to express myself, which I'd like got to do in a small way through Common Folk space, but this was like really for me an opportunity to like really see my own potential and how I would curate a space that that is centered around clothing and eco-friendly stuff. And so for me, I got really lucky because I'm a vendor of the Emporium, and he was like, use whatever you want in the store to display your stuff. So I get to just like walk around his store and be like, I'll take that shelf and this couch and whatever. And he's like, great, let's put it in there. And so inherently, my space shifts all of the time because people are buying the furniture from the Emporium in my space. So the couch will change within a week. With the exception of my corner shelf, which I'm like a little obsessed with. It's my favorite thing. But yeah, things will just kind of automatically shift. The rug will change every once in a while. And I think that change is really always healthy in a retail space. People want change. And because people will look at things differently every time they go in. So if it moves, you might catch them
Right.
that item might catch their attention the second time when it's somewhere else than it did the first time. In both spaces, I've put a lot of intentionality into making sure that people feel safe and comfortable and feel like they can be themselves in that space. Common Folk in particular puts a lot of really intentional effort. Our leadership has conversations all of the time of wanting to make sure that our community feels really welcome in our artistic space, because a lot of people here align arts with like outside coming in, and we are local artists, and sometimes that has become really powerful. We've had people come in and just really open up about their lives in very vulnerable ways in our space, and that's been really powerful to get to know our community in that way. And then I feel very similarly with Savvy Hive. I feel like our clothing is such a direct expression of ourselves. And so I'm, really trying to make sure that everyone in North Adams can find their style or their size, or, who they are in that store. Because at the end of the day, like it's a clothing store. And so I really just want everyone to be able to find themselves there. So I try and also gather feedback from the community and like people who come in. We ask a lot of questions of what they're interested in, and do they, are they looking for something else that isn't there, and try to meet those needs when we can. And similarly with the eco-friendly stuff, trying to support local makers in making those eco-friendly things, and also just having a space, which I noticed there was a pretty decent gap in North Adams of like eco-friendly lifestyle retail anywhere. So like, for example, I just brought in laundry detergent in a reusable container. And the maker who makes that like makes her own mix of laundry detergent. So really thinking along those lines and having space for that in North Adams.
Definitely. What for someone who wants to open a shop downtown or really anywhere, what sort of initial advice do you have for them? And this is definitely a loaded question, but I want to maybe think about, the logistics of like going to the town, like the things that Emily had to deal with, or like sourcing artists, or like should they get involved in the community? Maybe if they're not sort of like mission driven like that. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on those things. I mean, Emily, you kind of just fell into the business because you were like, I want to do this thing, and now it's my life. So
My first thing is I would suggest everyone to go and look at the planning board schedule, just to make sure you get on the docket, because otherwise you'll be waiting 6 weeks in between meetings, and that could really prolong a business for several months. So if you have a space already, you'll be sitting on rent for 3 months. It could take up to 3 months. So to me, that's key. But other than that, I say go for it, because it's really fun. Yeah, I'm sure something else will come to mind, but that's to me the most important. The second thing is just to be really authentic to yourself and to your own mission. If community and all that stuff isn't your mission, but let's say it's very design oriented or very whatever your mission is, I think that there's an audience for it, especially if you're being true to yourself. And if you're kind of a little bit more introverted and not needing to be out in the front of your store, but there's something for everyone, and there's room for every type of business, but it's really apparent when people aren't authentic, and so I really believe that everyone should follow their path and their passion. And so if you have that, just figure out a way to just stay true to your own mission and be flexible enough, but don't have to compromise your integrity and your values. And
Right.
finding your own values is is like before the planning board, figure out your value system and then go to the planning board, because I think having sitting down and asking why you do the work you do is really important. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I especially think it's important to be flexible as you develop your plan and as you actually get open, to see how the interactions happen, to see what's successful, and then have that room, while, as Emily says, still being true to your own vision and values. A little bit of flexibility, I think, goes a long way. But I agree. I think that, you know, North Adams and also Troy, my observations have been that if you can think of something to do and can do it, people will support you and people will be enthusiastic about your project. And it's a really great feeling to have that community support.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what has already been said. I think, and I can't necessarily speak for Troy, but in North Adams, I think there's this beautiful sense of opportunity here and this like low risk opportunity. So you can I kind of look at North Adams as like a playground. Like you can really try so many things here to see what sticks without sort of, without big negatives to that. I also think that we often have these conversations of like I hear a lot like, oh, well, I'm not going to open this kind of store because that one already exists. And I often reply to that person, like, if we can have 11 places that sell pizza in North Adams, we can have multiple versions of things here. People offer different things, I think competition's healthy, and I think we could challenge ourselves collectively to encourage more of that healthy competition, because we're very lucky here to have such support of small businesses. We don't have a lot of chains here. We're a very homegrown city, and I think people will support as long as you are, like Emily and Anna said, bringing yourself to it.
Felicity, what are your thoughts on new business owners?
I definitely echo almost everything that everybody said so far, for sure. I think it's definitely important to stay true to yourself and to your values, but also realize when something's really not working, or something, maybe you're really holding on to this idea because it was this little piece of the puzzle because you thought for sure this was going to be it. But then if it's actually not making you any money, then maybe it's time to switch it up. We didn't think when we opened we were going to offer any food besides pastries, but we had a big kind of need for fresh food options in downtown Troy that weren't like slices of pizza or like hot dogs or like kind of not super fresh options or healthy options. So we kind of decided to launch a super small fresh food menu, and now almost every single day our avocado toast is like one of our top selling items every single day. And I don't know, so if we hadn't made that switch and been like, oh, I guess we do need to do food, then I don't know, we would have been missing out on a lot of money. But also one of my things that I tell a lot of people is that a lot of people think running a business is just really fun and cool. But it's also really hard and scary and sad and lonely sometimes too, even when you have the community standing with you. So just always making sure that you really love and are passionate about what you're going to start, and that you're willing to give it your 100% attention and effort every day for the first few years at least, because otherwise it's pointless and probably not going to be successful. And that sounded a little negative, I guess, but it just, I don't know. I employ almost 10 people now, and it's just became a much bigger thing than I ever thought it would be. And so I don't know, it's incredible that it did, but it is a big, big thing, and it is my life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. No, you're being transparent, and that's what folks need if they're going to take on this fee, for sure.
Yeah. I'll say before you start, take a vacation, because you'll never.
Yes.
ever.
Yes.
I'm
for sure.
I haven't had a day off since I opened the business, so
yeah.
it's
Yeah, you're always thinking about it too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Even when I'm not in the store, I'm on it and I feel really bad about it. But
Mhm.
I it's like learning how to shut down. I don't have that. I don't know how to do that. And so I'm only 8 months in. So hopefully in 2 years I can like shut off a little
Yeah.
bit, but
I'm
I'm
almost 6 years in and finally am like, we live above our business also. So it's like also another aspect of like constantly being there.
mhm,
But we're finally having a little like more personal time and being
yeah,
able to separate personal and business a little bit more, which feels really good.
good. I'm jealous.
Get there, Emily.
Okay, hold on.
Yes, you will.
Well, now I'm going to turn to the ever so kind audience to see if anyone has any questions for these fine folks, or any comments, suggestions. It's okay if you don't, but
So I'm Megan. I'm usually really chatty, but I have vertigo right now. So I'm just like staring at you guys. I just wanted to say that bravo to everybody. I toy with the option of opening something in North Adams. It's like Jess was saying, it's a clean slate, it's a playground. North Adams is incredible in that way. One thing that I don't know a thing about, and that's why I joined this meeting, was in terms of rents and landlords. I've heard very kind of alarming things about certain people on our unfortunate Main Street, and it makes me hesitant to even dip my toe in the water. So I love that the streets going off Main Street are starting to develop more of an urban, fun, retail, active space, and it's a little bit like if Main Street isn't going to do it, we'll take the side streets, and I love that part of
Mhm.
it. So I guess that's my biggest thing. I'm a weaver and it takes me a long time to get product. Like Jess, I have yet to give you anything to put in Common Folk because I'm still weaving. And happily I sell out when I put stuff up, but it makes me kind of exhausted thinking about, okay, now I gotta go back in. So one thing I was thinking was, is there ever any talk about having maybe 4 people sharing a space, but not at the same time, almost like having 4 seasons with 4 different makers. So that, that in the fall, you'll always be able to get wovens, and in the winter, you'll always be able to get cappuccinos. And so I was thinking of something, something like that, it's almost like a pop-up idea, and it relaxes the financial side of it. On the other side, I have to say, I'm looking at 4 people who have grown businesses. So, I feel a little bit silly saying anything about the retail because you guys are the cost, because you guys have made it. So if you could speak a little bit very transparently about the money, that would help me understand more of what it is. And Felicity, you began that conversation, and I really appreciate it because I get, well, I'm not even, this is where I'm getting chatty again and I'm getting dizzy. So I'm going to stop. And I really love also that it's all women here, PS. There's something to that. It's like I want a poster. Yeah. And I do on a better day when I'm not spinning, I am 100%, behind everybody, and I want to get more and more involved. So, toes in. Thank you, everybody. All right, I'm going to mute now.
I can't speak specifically to North Adams, but I do just want to chime in and say that when we've been in the same location since we started, and when we first opened in our spot in Troy, we're not in the downtown shopping district. We are kind of on the outskirts of downtown, like still walkable for sure, but not in the downtown center whatsoever. And it did take a few years to grow, but like for those few years, we paid much, you know, the rent. Well, so we ended up actually buying our building, but our mortgage, and since we were not in the downtown, was much lower. But then since then, our city's grown, and I think we've helped grow a neighborhood in Troy that wouldn't have necessarily been anything. It was nothing for the first 2 years we were there, and now it's like, you know, bustling and has restaurants and has people walking around all the time. So I do think that, you know, there is opportunities for like the little side streets, like you were saying, Megan.
Megan, I think like the Ashland Street corridor too, those landlords have a much better reputation than the ones on Main Street, and is going to be a really up and coming part of. And I actually really wanted to rent the garage from Very Good because I thought that would be the most awesome plant store. And so if the garage is ever open, but I also think the pop-up idea is amazing because it is really hard, especially as a single maker, to make all your product. I thought when I opened the Plant Connector that I would make every single card, all the jewelry, and then quickly learned that, oh no, I got to outsource everything. And all I can do is source plants, you know, and that's all that, that I'm like feasibly able to do right now. But I think that there's a huge resource in North Adams to do something that is more of a pop-up model. And I would say that it would be beneficial to do it on a quarterly basis rather than a monthly basis. Like next year after this run of artists, I will definitely like try to slow it down and have some makers in the Plant Connector for 3 months. And I've been kind of toying with the idea of doing like pop-up businesses within the Plant Connector at some point. So because I think it's important to share, but I think there's room to do it somewhere else too. I would love to see some more businesses pop up and more spaces. So I think also staffing is really hard. Paying for staffing is super
The
hard.
hardest part.
Yeah. Just, yeah, all of that stuff. So if there's a way to really kind of have a collective to do it, I mean, I'm really jealous about Jess and being in the Emporium because we can't leave. I mean, I think that's the number one rule to any business owner is you got it. When you make that promise to be open, you have to be open. And so if there's a way to kind of figure out how collectively and communal you can do that, that's awesome. But so I'm kind of excited about that. And I've also think you're an amazing weaver. And so yeah, I could totally see something like that happen. I think people are looking for locally made artists. When they walk around, they sense this artist community, but they don't get a chance to really experience it. And I always have to tell people when they come into the Plant Connector, it's underground. It's happening. It's just underground. And you get a little taste of it, but there's something really cool happening in this community. So anyway, come and talk to me whenever you're Vertigo. I would love to.
Yeah, Megan, there are a lot of benefits to sharing space. Like, you know, Common Folk is a really good example of this. There are people in here who are now making upwards of, well, not now, pre-COVID. We're getting back to these numbers, but you know, there were some artists who were making their rent for the month. And I had a member come to me right before COVID and be like, I just paid my rent with my money. I'm an artist now. And the benefit of having shared space with artists is that we all collectively share the rent, and it's enormously more affordable per person to have some sort of stake in downtown retail, right? And so I think it's so worth going and finding the right people that blend with what you're doing and that can complement what you're doing. And like looking at space and figuring out what each of you can bring to the table. That there's also then however many people you get involved, there's also 4 people who can staff it and help make it run. And I think that is a very resilient approach to starting your business, because as you build and grow, you can always then go off and do your own space, you know, if when your budget gets there, but that's a really great way to scale up your business. And yeah, the downtown landlord issue is significant. I've dealt with that landlord the entire existence that Common Focus had a space downtown. We have popped up in places. We have signed, you know, 3-year leases. We've done every kind of relationship, and it's challenging to stay on Main Street with what we're doing specifically. I also think I think the sort of missing hole in downtown North Adams is a cafe that is large enough for people to sit in. The coffee is going to continue to bring people to Main Street. And that's a whole other land of the conversation. But yeah, Main Street, I mean, to give you some context, turning the corner onto Holden Street was half the cost of our space on Main Street. We literally moved our stuff out of our back door, and we're paying half of what we were supposed to be paying on Main Street. And we're doing a lot better on Holden Street than we were on Main. And so I don't think you have to be on Main Street. I think you can make your, you know, whatever space you decide to have, you can make it very successful.
Right, and you can make it a destination in itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And if anybody has anybody's ear about a restaurant or cafe or something where people can sit and have coffee and pie, that corner spot on Eagle and Main, you know Nighthawks, the painting by Edward Hopper.
Mhm.
You know, Google it.
Yep.
We're an art town. That should be Nighthawks. It should be renovated to look like Nighthawks. It's stuff like that that is so frustrating to me that North Adams doesn't get. Like the Holiday Inn should be individual rooms of different artists. Like they should embrace the art. I mean, it is an art city, among other things. But anyways, so if anybody has the ear of a restaurateur, that should be Nighthawks.
Yep.
That's what I think. But
Aaron Oster's hellbent that we're going to open a coffee shop in Troy, so maybe someday.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions? I want to be respectful of time, and although maybe you're in AC and it's working for you, whatever.
I will say the art vending machine that Nico created is amazing. And I think that if there was one at the Clark, one downtown, like I feel like it's an idea that has legs.
Yeah.
So bravo for bringing it. And
if you're interested, I'm happy to consult. But I
wait,
don't
what?
have another one.
The butthole pins are the best sellers.
I love those
A lot of
bubble pins.
buckle pins, and the artist is on vacation, so I'm not going to get any more for a month.
Megan, I also want to just throw out there, like, don't be for real transparency, I use my assets for artist money to open up the plant connector. So using resources, I mean, I had already applied for it took me 2 years to save up the initial $2,000. So it was a really slow process. I didn't know what I was going to do with that money. So I just knew something was going to happen at some point. So it just didn't become part of my own art practice. It became something different. So just utilizing whatever resources are out there. I think there's definitely stuff that's great that kind of helps with the seed money for these things, because it's really hard to come by without losing your foot, I think, so that's full transparency. It wasn't like I was sitting on a bunch of money, so start this awesome huge store.
Yeah, and I'm just going to throw out there that the North Adams project is part of the current grant available. Is one of the criteria is starting a creative business, and the grant is up to $4,000. So if Megan, if you're interested in starting a creative business, I think you should certainly apply. I mean, regardless, you should apply even as an individual artist to the current North Adams project grant. So
Amazing. Well, I'm gonna let y'all go. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate all the information in your faces on this Zoom land that'll hopefully end soon. Thank you for your support. You will get an email with recording of this conversation.